Holy crap, guys. Out of an entire galaxy of massive narcissistic projections from delusional boomer employers calling you lazy for not wanting to work, I think I might have just uncovered the biggest one yet. Have you ever been called a social parasite for not wanting to work? You've probably been called this label at least 100 times by your asshole boomer parents. Well, keep this label in mind, dear viewer, as it's about to be exposed as the narcissistic projection of the century. You see, calling us lazy, soft, and entitled doesn't work anymore, so they have to find newer and scarier words to shame us into accepting these dogshit wages from asshole employers. The newest one I've personally been accused of the most is communist. I got accused of being a communist more times than I could count on this channel. So this did lead me to do historical research on how actual communist countries / economies really function, and I discovered something very, very interesting. Now, to be honest, I didn't really know much about communism other than the typical Red Scare tactics the Western media is always pushing, since they nonstop accuse you of being a communist just because you don't want to work. You would think actual communist countries would then be full of lazy people who don't want to work. I thought this was the case too, and I wanted to go into my research of communism with an open mind. If it turned out that in communist countries you didn't have to work, I was prepared to be a full-on communist.
So is that what you discovered, Phil? Are you a communist now?
Unfortunately, no. You see, the dark truth I discovered was actually literally the exact opposite. Through the government-planned economy, everyone in communist countries was assigned a job and forced to work. People who didn't want to work were actually hardcore pressured, shamed, and persecuted for not wanting to work. Wow, why does that sound so familiar? In fact, not working was actually a criminal offense. And do you want to know what the legal name for that criminal offense was? Well, here comes the ultimate plot twist. You know how they call you a social welfare parasite for not wanting to work? It turns out the criminal offense for not wanting to work in actual communist countries was called social parasiticism. Literally, almost word for word, the exact same name these asshole boomer employers call you for not wanting to work. You literally can't make this shit up. They somehow actually have the nerve to call you a communist while they're the ones using actual communist tactics and terminology to try to force you into working. This is a whole new level of manipulative narcissistic projection even for them. This has to be the GOAT projection by a wide margin. They'll accuse you of being a communist and trying to rob people of their individuality and freedom while trying to hardcore pressure you into wage slavery. And nothing robs you of your freedom and individuality more than wage slaving away for a soulless corpo. They've been calling you a communist this whole time to hide the fact that they're the real biggest, the most evil communist dictators trying to sell your freedom to a corporation for a steaming hot piece of dog shit $7.25 per hour. Now, after I exposed these delusional boomers and corporate shills as being the true communists, a lot of young Gen Z poured into the comment section, further exposing their shameless communist propaganda. One nice thing about our community is that we have viewers and subscribers from all over the world. A lot are from Eastern Europe, where communism has a long and dark history that still affects people today. One by one, they started to pour in the comments, essentially confirming everything we just exposed. So, for example, a young guy from Bulgaria chimed in saying, "I can confirm this is absolutely true. I lived in Bulgaria, which was a communist country from 1946 to 1990. I wasn't alive back then, but my parents have told me the exact same thing, that you were forced to get a job whether you wanted to or not. So yeah, all these corpos trying to turn you into a wage slave and the people defending them are just defending communism. LMAO. I completely agree, since the only difference between a capitalist country and a communist country is that in a capitalist country, you're a slave to a corporation, whereas in a communist country, you're a slave to the government rather than to a corporation. But other than that, capitalist countries and communist countries are exactly the same as far as how badly they treat their workers. This last comment was something I totally agree with and why I couldn't ultimately get behind communism in the end. Though it was a great learning experience. When you think about it, corporations are very communist entities. You're forced to work for a fixed dogshit wage with all the huge profits going to the boss at the top. Profits are essentially taxes that you pay to a corporation. I mean, it's just basic math that in order for them to make more, they have to pay you less. In order for them to profit at all, they have to steal from your wages and productivity, the same way the government does in real communist countries. The names, the steps, the process, that's all that's really different. But I will say that while both communism and capitalism are extremely flawed systems, defenders of communism are at least far more honest people. At least they won't accuse you of being a capitalist while they themselves shamelessly spread capitalist propaganda. But anyways, if you've ever been called a communist or a social welfare parasite for not wanting to work, you now know the real truth behind it. These delusional boomers and corporate shills trying to hardcore shame and persecute you for not having a job are literally doing the exact same thing they did in actual communist countries. And somehow they have the nerve to call you a communist while they're the ones using actual communist tactics and even communist terminology. I mean, they call you a social parasite for not wanting to work, and in communist countries, the actual legal name for the crime of not wanting to work was literally social parasitism. It's almost word for word exactly the same. So why are they so hell-bent on accusing you of being a communist just out of the blue for seemingly no reason at all? Well, this was a great comment from the same post that shed a lot of light on it. You get it. The insults they hurl at other people is exactly what's wrong with them. The things they accuse others of doing, negative way they say others feel and think, is all just a sick confession of what's going on inside of them. They have to throw their inner guilt for it onto others before people notice it in them because they never take accountability for their crap. I don't know if you old enough to remember Pee Wee Herman, but whenever bullies would insult him, he would respond, "I'm like rubber, you're like glue. Whatever you say bounces off to me and sticks to you." He was talking about a narcissist projection in a comical way. Another tip to know the projection is the insult will just come out of nowhere for no real rhyme or reason. Nobody asked them their opinion, and out the blue, they will just start hurling insults at you. I dealt with them and their narcissistic abuse for 30 years. I know them very well. Communism aside, another common insult they constantly hurl at Gen Z and young people who don't want to work is, "You lazy, entitled snowflakes." It turns out this is just another sick narcissistic projection, as when you look at their behavior, employers are the true spoiled, lazy, entitled snowflakes. And we further expose this in this video right here. Check it out. I'll see you there.